Prosím, privítajte na stage Adam Smith z Ameriky. Nech sa páči. Adam, thank you.
Ďakujem.
This is your place.
Ďakujem. Dobré ráno, Slovakia. I don't know much, but I know that. And ďakujem to Linda and Erica, Monica, Susanna, and all of you in the Institute. Wonderful to be here today from New York via Vienna and Bratislava. I have family in Bratislava, actually, but Brazilian, so it doesn't count. I live in New York. I have 30 years of experience in both investing and buying companies, family-owned companies, and also investment banking and mergers and acquisitions of putting companies together. I just finished several years in rebuilding an investment bank, which is one of the oldest investment banks in the world, Salomon Brothers from 1912. It's fairly old for the US, but not so much in Europe, but it was a wonderful legacy. We brought it back the last couple of years to compete with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, and we'll see. It takes a time to build a business, as you know, decades. Over the years, I've had the privilege of investing from private equity holding companies and partnerships in private companies, about $1 billion of transactions going back to 2002. So I'm around 50, but not exactly. I won't give the number. And recently, to get closer to the family businesses, family enterprises, family offices. Perhaps we won't talk about family offices so much today, but there is a whole ecosystem that's quite complex and multifaceted in changing. The industry of both family businesses and family offices is undergoing a dramatic transformation. I'll talk a bit about that today. So last year, Monica and some others, Sandor around Europe and the US, Alfredo Damascus from Italy, have been my guests on a show on LinkedIn, which is called the Family Business Audiocast, sharing stories about succession, knowledge transfer, governance, every 2 weeks. So it's fun. I recommend you listen when you have time. I think there's, as Erica was saying, it's very important to share information with others in the world to give back. So what is really wealth? Wealth is the ability to create value for yourself and your families and your legacy. Today I'm going to talk a bit about legacy as well. My speech is talking about the ability to have wealth and power and scale with both your head and your heart. So trying to find a balance that we've been talking about today. We see some examples in the paper business, in the rice business, in the wine business, in the hotel business, mixing the capitalism, which is very near to my heart, with my name, of course. I'm not related to him, but I still have to appreciate capitalism. But also creating good while also doing good. So I think that's a very powerful matter in today's world, to give back to society, to our communities, not just through philanthropy and giving away, but also creating businesses which are influential. So defining legacy for business is very different for the family. So for business, in the world, it seems larger family businesses, it can be a BMW, it can be a Gallo, are looking at scale, looking at the cash flow that comes from the scale and the influence in the market, both the industry and also the economy and your community. So we see family businesses growing, combining, creating scale in order to give back to their family, also to their community, and additionally into philanthropy. So I'd like to refer to that balance, right? If family businesses are working so hard to create scale, which is stressful, it has issues of succession, of ego, of fear, of the difficulty of communication. What is all that for? Ultimately, it's for some form of legacy, some form of leaving something behind. I think that's a very beautiful thing. So let's say Wall Street, for example, began over 100 years ago with a small group of traders that were trading cotton and haggling over small trades. And that's only 100 years ago. You have businesses here that are in fourth, fifth, sixth generation, much longer than 100 years. So it's important to keep in mind that the balance of the drive, right, the motivation, but also keeping balance in life and your family, and having that communication that Erica was talking about within the family business. For family, for example, I found this photo similar to here, close enough. I see families, when I advise them on selling their company, board of directors, governance, is thinking about the ecosystem and looking to maintain continuity for the pride that Erica was referring to, but also the legacy that goes beyond the pride. The pride is the emotional connection to the story, but there's also something bigger than inside of us. So inside, I feel like there's that ego that we have to become successful. We want to share that, communicate that with our children, with succession. Sometimes the succession ends, especially in G2, G3, over 80% end. So how do these dynamics intersect between the business legacy and the family legacy? So legacy is a tricky topic because for each of you, if we ask you, okay, I have wisdom, and I have wealth and wonder. So let's say, how many here would say legacy is related to the intellectual building and the transfer of that knowledge to the next generation? Let's see. Information transfer to the next generation. Okay, maybe 15%. Now wealth, creating that cash, the wealth in the bank account that can go by and share that wealth to the next generations within the community. So let's say wealth would say, what percentage would be thinking about the wealth would be another 15%. Now here we have, I say wonder is about the connection to your culture, to your world, to your passion, to humanity. So who's thinking about wonder in the world? Another 15%. So we have at least 40%, 50% still thinking about other things. So everyone has different feelings of why they're here. It's interesting. So in wisdom, in creating the power of knowledge within the family business is, in my opinion, can be tied to collaboration within the family, starting with the G1, the owner, the founder, then it goes to the children, creates a board of directors, can have a trust, can have a family charter, have to hire lawyers for that and pay them, and then give them power to write those things and embrace it and share it. So it's very complicated to let that pride open to external advisors and trust them and pay them for services which you may not think you need. But usually it's very valuable to capture that information within the family business and prepare ahead of time. You might have a death in the family. You want to prepare ahead of time. You might have G2, G3, or children decide to quit. They're done. So you want to prepare ahead of that. You might want to sell the business, divorce, death, change of mind, emotional disconnection, stress. Someone called you and they want to buy your company. Let's say Unilever calls the Happy Tea Company and they say, well, I'm just having a good time and I'm giving back to the world. We're very healthy, we're profitable, we enjoy our family business, we don't want to change, but at some point that number gets quite large and you want to have a conversation before you get a call, before someone dies, before you have a divorce, before you have a family that decides to change their interest in the business. So dialogue is essential to prepare for any outcome. And what Erica was saying is quite complicated because you have to set the respect for the wealth and the power, but also to respect the family and the next generation and to include them in that conversation. And there's a certain pride, complexity there. I mentioned also learning to create information and knowledge for the family business with mentorship, sending your kids to school, could be in London, Poland, maybe they go to the US, they could get internships, scholarships, of course, involving advisors into the company to learn information. I recommend Monica, for example, with FBC, the Institute. There's lots of information online. You can read articles with lots of magazines. It's important to constantly learn. The bar is getting higher as competition grows, globalization grows. Although we're having a slight setback right now in globalization, I think that's a blip that will come back. So it's important for companies in a country like Slovakia to keep an eye out for globalization and try to get outside your border and export, but also import knowledge. So for wealth, first of all, I think it's important to diversify. For example, the Gallo, the company you'll hear about, has different products. You might look at the tea company and they have not just the ingredients, which can be sold B2B to business. That's cash flow, predictable, longer term contracts. B2C is the brand that's very expensive to build, but once you build it, there's loyalty from the customer. So you can create cash flow with the B2B business. Quite boring, steady, long-term contracts, more of a corporate sales force, but you can have those contracts for 3, 6, 12 months, and that can feed the brand or something else. Or you invest in technology, for example. Why is technology important for wealth? Because ChatGPT, AI, transformational. You've been reading about this for the last couple of months. It's a little bit concerning and scary, but it's also very powerful. It's important to get on the bus, to ride with it, use it, and stay up with competition. Ultimately, everything is a competition with other businesses, not just in Slovakia. Could be in Vienna, could be in New York, can be some small little shop in Norway that has $1 billion. You don't know anymore. So I recommend to leverage technology in different ways, to learn, use AI, save your information safely for long term. You never know what's going to happen, and hire family experts and technology companies to gather, AI, store, preserve over the generations. Now, scale is super important, I think, in more of a closed economy like Slovakia, where you have to really struggle to get out and export for currency, diversification, larger markets. I've been buying and selling companies and helping founders do that, to plan, to sell, merge with other founders, other family businesses. I'll get back to that later. It's not just because I'm from Wall Street and our job is to make money with money, but it's also to think about scale. How do you create scale? What are some ways to create scale? Maybe throw me some English. I don't have my headset, but what are some ideas to create scale in business? Monica. Scale, size. Yeah. Any? Human capital, okay, that's a good one.
Yes, employees, then turnover.
So go outside
Size of turnover.
go outside the company to acquire human capital with external CEOs for knowledge. That gets back to knowledge. What's another example of creating scale? That's good. So you can buy, you can invest in other businesses, you can also merge, you can go into new markets as well. So scale is essential to at least stay steady, right? Our next speaker will be talking about advising families on trust and more complexities of protecting the wealth. So one way to protect the wealth is with lawyers, with documents, with structures, charters, governance, but also more money, more cash flow. How do you create more cash flow is you can diversify, you can buy, you can incubate and seed other technologies, invest in your friends' businesses or their family businesses. Okay, now back to the heart. The wonder is, what is all of the purpose of this stress and creating wealth and power? It's really to be that connected to society in some fashion, right? Influence in your think tanks, in your schools, in your boards, in your clubs, with your friends, to have influence about opinions, to be able to make a difference in the community, to buy a company, to save somebody's company, to protect a distressed situation. Think about 3 years ago, would you, when we're going through COVID or a recession, and your friend's business is struggling, it's not just about the business, it's also to help that family friend, help your neighbor, help another company. Maybe you have to buy it. Maybe you have to invest in their company, loan them something. So this gets back to the engagement with humanity and the engagement with your other companies, but also working with the public sector. So not so much in America, but I think in Europe, especially perhaps in Slovakia, there is ways to work with the government nationally and regionally with loans, subsidies, information, and I think that's important to stay connected to your broader community. Lastly, legacy for many people is once you get on to the second and third generation, much wealth is about passion. So extending legacy into real estate, having land, farms, buying art, collectibles, being a philanthropist. So once you get to another level, it's important to, I think, give back and plan for that. You don't know when you're going to have a change in the family business. You want to be prepared to give back. So briefly, what can legacy leave to the family? So options include, obviously, wealth, scale to share with your children, your family. It doesn't have to be your children. Maybe you don't have any children. You might have a cousin you like, ex-wife even, is family. Or sometimes you have cousins that are not really cousins, but they are like family. So it doesn't have to be your daughter, your son. It can be part of a broader family. Make them your family. Also, cultural values. We talked about philanthropy. These are things that are evolving into a family office. So once you get to be, let's say, 25 million, 50 million, 100 million, it's important to stay in touch with your lawyers and prepare for a family office, some structure, leveraging Slovakian law, EU law, thinking about ways to leverage your wealth with structuring. Now, some legacies in today's world. Kind of like a game show. We have about 11 minutes left. But so how do big businesses start? What do they start with? And how did they get there? Sometimes it's important to look back and think about where we all started. We started with $100. We had a couple friends loan some money for $10,000. We bought a struggling business, maybe some IP. And as these businesses grow, I think it's important to maintain that pride, even if you have to ultimately sell it, merge it, no one wants to run it. I think this legacy is that Eric was referring to is essential to maintain the pride, to stay connected to the purpose. And that's hard because work is hard and everyone's talking to you about making more money. Are you ready to sell? Do you want to buy my company? Are you going to get bigger? But ultimately, I think it's important to be proud every day that we go to work. So families that maintain their legacies through generations are admired, but it's not easy. So a couple of examples in the world, just briefly. You can get our documents from the Institute, I'm sure. Hermes, we all would like an Hermes bag or sell Hermes bag or give to our wife. Obviously, there's some tricky dynamics in the Hermes family with gardeners, giving back, lots of ego, but super respected company creating craftsmanship and going down into vertical integration all the way down to the crocodiles and the farms and actually have an institute to train their staff to maintain the heritage and pass that down. There's hundreds of elderly experts in beautiful farms and somewhere in France making these bags, and they're in their 70s and 80s, and they keep going. You have to replenish that. $9 billion, euro. Fefero Group in Italy, not quite as interesting as Gallo, but 12 billion, and is making Nutella. And Fred Rocher is owned within the confectionery business, very tight-knit family. We've seen this in many Italian businesses, of course, Fiat, Prada, and so on. Fascinating, $13 billion. Over in Italy, in India, not a single family, but a consortium of family is Tata, as you know, bought Jaguar, massive consulting, industrial, lots of interesting, boring companies. 100 billion. Cargill, 100 billion, started by the Macmillan family way back in agribusiness with farms. Very simple business. 1865, fairly old. Of course, Chanel is another example. Now, Chanel is an interesting story because Chanel started with, as you know, Coco Chanel. Wonderful story and movie if you've never seen it. And was a very niche business. It could be making a seed in a farm. It can be a handbag. It can be some sort of technology concept. It can be a manufacturing tool. But with great effort and consistency, Chanel built this powerful brand. But now they have second and third generation, fourth generation. They're not making the handbags. They're in a family office with a very nice building somewhere in New York and Paris, making investments in lots of other companies. That creates diversification. That takes the cash from the alligator to the plant to the handbag to Neiman Marcus, Real, wherever you sell it, it goes back into the company, and then they're diversifying into philanthropy, farms, art, venture capital. This is the future of the family business, I think, as the margin and the scale grows to take advantage of the wealth, to diversify and give back and put it into other areas, which also gets back to succession. When you have 80% or so of G3 not continuing, then the family that is proud and doesn't want to sell is looking around. There's no children. That pride, there's no connection to the pride. So what do? We'll talk about that later, but sustaining the legacy is essential not just for the ego, the pride, but also for the community, for the continuity of the concept of family business in today's world. On the one hand, family business can be a very local, smaller thing, but if you add them up, it's the biggest business in the world. I mean, it's much bigger than Microsoft and Amazon and ChatGPT and General Motors, you name it, Procter & Gamble. All the companies combined that are public, that are not family, they don't come anywhere close to the size of family businesses. Family businesses globally are 60, 70, 80, 90% of the total value of companies in the world, depending on the markets. So I think that's something to be proud of, and it's not a cottage industry. It's not a small thing. It's something to work together and to leverage that ecosystem. I highly recommend to work with the think tanks, the schools, gather events like this, but even smaller ones where you get together once a month with your friends, other businesses, other business families, family of businesses, a family office, create a group, a little think tank, and have dialogues to learn and give back. It can be a dinner, it can be walks, having a cigar, taking a class together at the university in Bratislava, whatever. Strategies for engaging the next generation requires being adaptable as well and using modern governance structures. So sometimes what happens when you have the G2, G3, and you start getting bigger is this conflict of pride, of keeping the information to yourself, but then willing to share that and include and be vulnerable to the next generation, and then including also a board of directors and then lawyers. It becomes complicated. There's a lot of tension there, but it's important to stay open and be adaptable. So I think there's a difference between vulnerability and adaptability. Erica will probably have a lot to say of this, but I think that it's important to be both open and transparent for the dialogue, but also adaptable. So what's the difference? The difference is listening versus changing and being nimble, right? So call to action, I think, in the family business world, given the competition, given the big public companies are not family run, they don't care about the culture so much, they don't care about the legacy so much, they care about power. I'm sure you have friends that are in public companies or not family businesses. They're mostly focused on their brand, their power, their cash flow, maybe their culture. They're not so concerned about the rankings of their culture and the warm, fuzzy feelings inside these companies. It's really more about scale and power and cash flow. So they are our competition, right? Family businesses are a delicate thing and very special. Other companies, even though they're only 10, 20% of the world, they carry the power in the world, except for a small number of family businesses. So I share a quote here about thinking about the extra effort in collaboration, in values, thinking about culture, purpose, mission, collaborating around those values, and then always remembering the purpose of the company, going back to the founder, going back to G1, to your father, to your mother, grandparents. What is the point? It's usually some element around legacy, but every family will define legacy in their own way. I have a quote here by one of my favorites, Theodore Roosevelt, 26th president of the US. He's quite famous, not perfect. He says, "The man who really counts is the doer, person who does, not the mere critic. The man who actually does the work, even if roughly and imperfectly, not the man who only talks or writes about how it will get done." People were pretty smart in 1891 even, a while ago. So special thanks to the Instituto Regno Businessu and Linda, of course, fabulous, relatively new powerhouse leading Erica's legacy. Thank you to Susanna for putting this on. I'm here because of Monica at FBC. Thank you, Ms. Krasklova. You can find more about me and the global family office ecosystem and these issues on my podcast, also others, I recommend listening to these sessions. LinkedIn is very helpful in this regard. You can learn a lot in 15, 30 minutes. So I'm also very proud to be supporting Monica and Slovakia and the world in this area, because it's a precious thing, and over time the family businesses will have to, I think, work more together and to come together to create more scale and collaboration to protect the legacy. So thank you very much for your time today.
Ďakujeme veľmi pekne. Koľko máme času na otázky? 10 minút. 10 minút máme na otázky. Teraz neviem, čo mám robiť, lebo počujem aj preklad, aj seba. Tak, dobre, takže slajdo alebo mikrofón. Ja tu mám, Adam, na teba otázky. Ty si síce nám poďakoval všetkým aj za svetový mier, a to je dôležité, aby sme vedeli fungovať, a veľmi ti my ďakujeme, ale predtým máme na teba ešte strašne veľa otázok. Môžeme ísť na to?
Yes.
Dobre.
Okay.
Tak si uznávaný odborník v Amerike práve na strategické riadenie a na také rodinné podnikanie, venuje sa rodinným firmám. Tak aký model riadenia a prerozdelenia podielov, čo veľmi teraz v tomto momente zamestnáva slovenské a české rodinné firmy, lebo sme práve v tom procese, tak čo by si mohol odporučiť z tvojej praxe? Nejaký taký dobrý model, ktorý sa ti rokmi osvedčuje, že to môže pomôcť našim rodinným firmám.
So looking at the tools that we use in the US, which is a very large, very competitive market, is useful because I think it's coming to you. It's coming as the market grows, the family businesses grow. You will have more experts, more vendors, more resources, and more combinations. I think it's important to keep ahead and find that information and bring it back to you. So, for example, in the US, we have a lot of competition between the advisors. I encourage you to maybe, you can find resources in Bratislava, but you might want to go to Vienna or Germany or Milan. Not so far. Switzerland even, more expensive. You travel, but it's important to find the best resources in your ecosystem and to have high expectations of your advisors. They may not like that you're asking them and pushing them hard, but you're paying them and they have expertise. And if they don't have the answers, I think it's important to go find the answers you need for your business. Another activity which is, I think, increasing in family businesses and also in the small businesses is combinations. So if a company is not able to scale significantly, or you don't have a G2 or G3 or G4, and maybe the industry is changing, I recommend to think ahead of time so that you, as the owners, you can be in control of the destiny of where your company is going to go in the end if you see that succession is not happening. Even if succession is happening, the succession may only be successful for 2 years or 10 years. It may not be 100 years, so it's important to think ahead. So I would keep an eye on the heart of the legacy and the passion, but also the head to think, okay, I can still be connected and love my business and my family and build a culture, but then we also have to be ready and prepared for the unknown.
Dobre, ďakujem. A čo v prípade, ak celá jedna generácia nemá záujem o rodinnú firmu alebo vôbec o správu rodinného bohatstva, lebo to majú ináč. Čo vtedy?
Take a vacation for a couple weeks and
Okay.
take a break, come back, think about it without too much anger or passion or frustration, and balance the connection to that legacy, but also the understanding of the mindset of the next generation, which is maybe a third of the audience. Doesn't have to be G2, it can be G6, but next generation meaning anyone under 40 years old. Okay, who is under 40? Under 40. Okay. 35%. G2 or G3, G4, but that's the next generation. Your mind works differently, okay? You're not listening to Bon Jovi and driving pickup trucks and having Doritos. Like, you have a green juice, checking your Instagram feed. There might be a client there. Maybe you go on a date through Instagram, and then you're checking your trading account on your app, moving some family business around, family money around, connecting on LinkedIn with maybe a diplomat in Bratislava for dinner. You book it on the app on Open Table, and you're not in the factory. You're not thinking about the legacy so much. It's the whole lifestyle. So as the owners, I think, not me, but previous generation. I won't ask who's over 40 because it's the other people. To be respectful of the next generation, their mindset is different, and it's not good or bad. It's just a very different mindset, and it's important to work together. There will be many, many businesses that will not have succession, and that's okay. As long as the journey to no succession is not messy. So, transparency, respect, pride, preparation, reality. So specifically, option number 1, after vacation, so in Vaca, sit down, think about it. You can go the external CEO route. Actually, Chanel has a fantastic external CEO. She's not from the Chanel family. She's doing very well. I think Chanel's growing 10 or 20%, even though it's $15 billion. So you can improve with external management and just drop the succession. The succession is in the legacy, not the family.
Okay.
The business, not the... Option number 2, okay, we're done. Let's sell and cash in, right? Monopoly, you push in all your chips in your hotels and stack the board, and you get hit and you make a lot of money. So you sell, you're done. That's okay. But you have to be ready, prepared, and disconnect from that business. Or maybe the children want to succeed, but they're not equipped. They don't have what it takes. So sorry, you're not going to run the business. I love you, but it's not for you. We're going to sell. Now, option number 3 is about scale. So I'll finish here by saying, I think there's a building dynamic in family businesses to need to work together. So what does that mean? It could mean working with the crops and the different businesses, vertical integration, a joint venture, licensing, investing, lending. But I think that to protect the legacy and to solve some of the succession gap, there's going to be more combinations of family businesses. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because the combination of 2 or 3 or 4 family businesses together can be stronger than the sum of the parts if it's done well, and also you're still protecting the individual legacies. So I see this happening, significant growth in this dynamic the next 5, 10, 20 years.
Dobre. Ešte určite o tom bude hovoriť Birgita, takže máme ešte aj takú možnosť, že ďalej sa budeme o tom venovať, keď Birgita príde na pódium. Adam, máme ešte 1,5 minúty. Vyber si z tých otázok na ktoré by si rád odpovedal. A ešte máme otázku z publika, takže nejaké možno, vieme urobiť nejaké quick šip-šup, to po slovensky, vieš, šip-šup, neviem, ako to preložia, tam dámy. Také
Okay.
nejaké, dobre. Takže,
yes.
a ešte máme otázky, hej, no, Adam, musíme šip-šup. Dobre, ktorú si vybral? Dobre, ideme. Prvú? Poďme na to. Dobre.
Adaptability, the second one. Yeah?
Second one.
Yeah?
Keďže ja neviem po anglicky a vy ste písali po anglicky, neviem to ani prečítať, ináč by ste sa možno aj veľmi podľa mňa nasmiali. Ale dobre, takže vy to viete, takže poďme na to.
I know it. The adaptability is important for the long term, over time, as I was saying. So if you take what Erica was referring to about communication, staying open, it's very difficult to maintain that communication. That's being adaptable, is forcing the conversation with your lawyers, with your family, with your board. So the analogy would be, if you really want to excel in this adaptability, think about it like if we want to go to the gym, be in shape, work on our diet, wellness, be a good parent to our children, we can do an okay job and get by and be okay, or you may need to gather more information, more collaborate, more resources to become an athlete, right? It's not at Michael Jordan level, but going from things are okay into being an athlete in the family business. And that requires being adaptable. I think it's super important. And at some point, as Erica says, there could be no succession. That's okay. But maybe find a way to extend that longer into the next generation until that story has ended. Yep.
Dobre. Dominika, chceš ty otázku položiť, alebo položím ja tú poslednú, keďže jej rozumiem. Takže rýchlo musíš povedať, máme minus 1 minúty. Takže aká je tvoja otázka? Musíš do mikrofónu.
Budem rýchla. First of all, thank you so much for the
nech sa
fruitful
páči.
presentation. It was about legacy, and I used to be working with Procter & Gamble, so I'm very familiar what it actually means in real life. Legacy in the company. I'm supposed to be quick, so I'm sorry for speaking so fast. So it means that I am a marketer, so my question is related to marketing, and it would be, would you agree with claiming that brand and having a strong brand is a great tool for passing the legacy onto the next generation? Because all of the brands that Hermès and the rest of them, that's what they actually did. Would you agree with this or not, please?
Super important to invest in the brand, and perhaps it's important to realize that you can have companies with power and scale without a brand, but then if you think about, let's say, an app or technology or some sort of SaaS or an invisible brand out there in business, it may not seem like a brand to us, but it's a brand to the ultimate consumer, which is very much a difference between B2B businesses, right, larger business accounts, or B2C, are you selling a product to an end consumer? So if you're investing, yes, to an end consumer, super important to reinvest in your brand and hire agencies, hire human capital, work on the packaging, designing, all those things, work on the power of the brand. But I think the other side to your point is it doesn't have to be Procter & Gamble or Hermès. It can be, let's say in Italy, Loro Piana, super nice clothes. You can go to the store in Milan and spend lots of money buying Loro Piana, but all of the Loro Piana fabrics, over half of the company is private label. And their wool, right, like the ingredients in the tea company, that creates the cash flow for Loro Piana, and you don't see that anywhere unless you look all the way inside your jacket or your pants. So, yes, the brand is important in all respects, but I think it's interesting to balance the more expensive power of a brand with other businesses that create cash flow, and you can recycle that into the brand.
Ďakujeme veľmi pekne. A teraz v tomto momente Miroslav, Diana, Beatka a Andri, môžete si užiť ešte Adama a položiť súkromne otázky, aby ste dostali odpovede na vaše otázky a užiť si Adama ešte dnes, až do večera tu bude, až do zajtrajšieho rána. Takže veľmi pekne ti, Adam, ďakujeme za tvoje skúsenosti, za to, že si preletel toľké kilometre a pol kontinenta alebo pol sveta, aby si prišiel a aspoň na chvíľku sa s nami podelil s tým, čo robíš v Amerike. Prajeme ti ešte veľa úspechov a z celého srdca ďakujeme v mene nás všetkých. Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Ďakujem.